Hello, everybody. This is Aaron Grizel from the Northern California Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Foundation. And we're very happy to have you again with us during this MLK 2021 virtual celebration. Our discussion today is a partnership with the San Francisco Labor Council and a part of our ongoing relationship this year in place of our annual and very sought after breakfast, our annual Labor and Community Breakfast. So we thought because of and because we are exercising the type of safety protocols that are required of all of us, we wanted to do this special panel to discuss a couple of things that in our community and many of you might not know about right now, but we wanted to get some perspectives from two emerging leaders in our community in the San Francisco region and nationally. So let me introduce our panel and our two guests here today. I want to introduce everyone to Kimberly, the Interim Executive Director of the San Francisco Labor Council. And the Labor Council is the central labor organization with 160 now organizations. Kim, is that about right? Or
yeah,
is there more there? And she sits in an important position of influence when it comes to our labor community and our community as a whole. So welcome, Kim.
thank you for having me.
And then we have Reverend Dr. Sakina Young Skaggs. Dr. Young Skaggs is the new Senior Associate Dean of Religious Life and pastor of the Memorial Church at Stanford University. Good afternoon, Dr. Young Skaggs. How are you?
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Good. Wonderful to have you. We want a little bit by talking to each of you about some of your backgrounds, what brought you to this space before we get into the meat of our discussion. Kimberly, you're the interim executive director of the Labor Council. Give us a brief of your background and how you came to sort of the labor community, and then to be in this position specifically.
Yeah, I grew up in a labor household. I was raised by a pack of Teamsters, I always like to say. And, labor is in my blood through and through. I'm third generation labor activist. And I started organizing healthcare workers in the early 2000s. And, I love it. I love advocating for working people. And I've just recently taken over this position as of November of last year. I was a campaign director for a couple of years there. And my predecessor moved on and they asked me if I'd be interested in taking the position. And I said, yes, I would love to do it and continue to advocate for working families throughout the Bay Area. I mean, I love doing that.
So as the executive director, what does that position entail in general in terms of in relation to the labor unions, the locals, and the regionals that you sort of are in service to?
Yeah, basically the Labor Council, we get together once a month with the labor organizations, and we try to coordinate our activities and our advocacy for working families throughout the Bay Area, whether it's legislation, contract campaign, and adding activists so we can work more coordinated and bring more power to the working people that we're advocating for, whether it's the frontline workers for this COVID crisis, like teachers, nurses, grocery store workers. We represent all those folks in San Francisco, and we're continually advocating for their safety, their, making sure that the people that they serve are safe as well. So we're constantly looking at legislation, figuring out how to best serve the people of San Francisco, and making sure that the working families are represented in that. You see. And then, we love to partner with the community, with you for the MLK breakfast every year. Go out to the march in normal years, the old normal, I guess.
Right.
And working with the community and bringing labor in the community together so that people seeing families are very much part of the community, and we are the community, and we want to work with everyone and make sure that everyone can have the dignity in their work, has a job so that they can take care of their own. I like to look at it as the basic platform for just any society. People should have a right to work, in the right to have a place, fair wages, fair benefits, take care of health care, things like that, because those things are the most important to the Labor Council.
Oh, very good. That Sakina sort of talks about some of your work, I know. Tell us about your background, sort of how you came to your position, and sort of where what led you to where you are now. I mean, the senior associate dean at Stanford's not a, that's a gig.
It's a gig, but it's part of my vocation. Like Kimberly, I think I came out of the womb. My mother will let you know, have always let me know throughout my entire life, you were in my womb when she marched with King. And so I started my life, in that way. I take my history is more than just the 2 decades of my professional career. My entire life has been activism, starting from one coast now and to the other coast. I'm a Jersey girl. So Newark, New Jersey, of course, the 60s and 70s. Newark, New Jersey is my activism from working on campaigns as a child, and doing activism in the early 70s and 80s. And then throughout my collegiate for justice, not only for the farm workers, I attended Arizona State University undergraduate and Boston University for a large part of my Seeking King. Boston University is the alumni alma mater of Martin Luther King's doctoral work.
Right.
And so has been carved out there in university spaces. So I'm a scholar activist. And as a scholar activist, I take a praxeological approach, meaning I live it into my practice and not just in my theology or my, so it's very everyday, engaged in everything I do. In Arizona, of course, Arizona was one of the final states to do the Martin Luther King holiday. And, I was one of those students leading that march during my collegiate years as well. In my seminary years, attending Martin Luther King, Boston University, digging a little deeper theologically and ideologically, was able to do work there, and then took on the work of staying in the university and the academy as a place, not only in the church, I'm ordained AME, African Methodist Episcopal. And so not only being ordained, but also understanding that with that ordination came the commitment to activism, not only because of the ordination's deep roots in social justice, but also because of my calling. And so my calling has always been that of social justice. Boston, I went to university and continued my work there as the Protestant chaplain, and then returned to Boston as the associate dean there at Boston University at the chapel, the same chapel where Howard Thurman, who was ideologically influential on Martin Luther King and his work as well. And so I take Howard Thurman with me wherever I go. And of course, somehow, Thurman, who has had also deep roots in the Bay Area, brought me here, in which I believe will be my new home. So I'm excited to be here, be in this position to work with a phenomenal team in the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life at Stanford.
Well, welcome. Welcome to you to the Yay area as one of our new partners. I want to dig in a little bit. So 2020 has been a very difficult and painful year, but it has been, I think, a very enlightening year and a power shifting year, I think, in several areas. And then on January 6th, we saw perhaps the reverberation, the reaction to that power shift in possibly. I would.
You saw
that's
yes.
theoretical, but I want you to know, what was it about all of this stuff that has occurred, and including last week? What is your thought about all of that, and how do you work that in your own heads, and how you respond to that, personally, and then in your work? That was a stark situation that happened. So how do we respond? Kim, I want to start with you, and then you all let me know what your thought is on that.
I don't even know where to begin. I had so many mixed emotions on that day. I couldn't believe that what was really happening before my eyes. I turned on CNN and I was like, oh my God, what has this country come to? And how did we get here? Like, those were the things that were going through my mind. I was appalled, and I was actually really, really, really embarrassed. Because I feel like the country had just evolved. And I feel like that was like the culmination of the miseducation that has been going on in our school systems for so long now. And it's like, it was also like a clash of I feel like a generational clash, because it was like people just refusing change, but wanting change at the same time. It just became, to me, like all these clash of ideas. I looked at a lot of those folks with anger and pity at the same time. It was extraordinary how uneducated these folks were, miseducated these folks were, how we as a society allowed like this demagogue to allow this to happen. I don't even know how, the country devolved so quickly and badly over the last 4 years. We've been watching it, and it's like, oh my Lord.
Yeah, that's what it seemed. That's what it seemed like. It seemed like it was like just in terms of looking at it over 2020. If someone had just come from the outside, not knowing anything about the history, it was like, man, things changed so quickly, in that something was going. What do you see as some of the underlying that sort of caused this January 6th situation?
I'm gonna take off my clergy hat and use my professor hat.
Good.
As a professor, this didn't just evolve. This wasn't just a mere culmination of 2020. This has been a long time coming. And we say this is not our America. This has been America for many people. It's just, the ancestors of those people wore hoods. Okay. So, now we can see face recognition. Now we can see, there's no fear. And so fear was stripped away. And the fear of being seen and to see them in their full anger and glory and violence that manifest on that day in a form of a riot that was very entitled and very privileged, and certainly, yes, propagated by the work of and the teachings of the current administration, and as Kimberly so aptly said, miseducation. However, there were leaders behind this that were quite educated. There were those in Congress who led and gave prior to Wednesday to show around, literally casing the place. And so, the problem is to think that this was just a 2020 thing. This was not just a 2020 thing. This was something that happened over the long arc of injustice, over the long arc of tolerating hate and civil incivility among our people in the United States. And I say our people because I love this country. All right. I've traveled all over the world and I still come home and I love this country. My mother, who lives in me, and my elders say our ancestors cried and died, not only for the nation, but for our right to vote, for our rights for the franchise, for our rights as citizens. And so as such, I honor the work that our public servants do. The dishonor of the work of our public servants was on full display. Dishonor of our military was on full display. The dishonor of our democracy and civil rights. And when we talk about civil rights, I don't just mean, civil rights in the modern civil rights moment, but those fundamental rights of the American citizen. All right, those were on dishonor, and that's what happened on that day. Now, granted, come January 20th, we're going to have an inauguration, we're going to have a new administration, but there's a lot of work still to be done. A lot. Now we have a movement. The Republican Party will say that, this is not our Republican Party. Well, it is a fractured party. It is in time where we see that the structure of democracy and the values of what we think of as conservative republicanism has shifted, and many have broken off. And this is an undercurrent and a break that have to be reckoned with, right? What ideologies that show that promote action, in other words, have to be aware of those actions, and we saw those actions on Wednesday.
So Kim, Kim, so as you sit in a very to where the Vice President of the United States, the Vice President elect for the next 4 days or whatever, the Speaker of the House, the number 2 seat, the number 2 and the number 3 people behind the presidency are San Franciscans, held positions. He represented and represent us right here in the city and county. We have a mayor who is an African American woman. We have Janet Yellen, who was the head of the San Francisco Fed, who is now the treasury, the Secretary of the Treasury, the nominee by Biden. We have Barbara Lee. We have all of these folks, and SU, all of these people representing, and you sit in an interesting position because you represent the workers in this region as a woman and as a woman of color. Given all of this conflagration, what is your charge and goal being in this because of them? I mean, you have the phone numbers of each and every one of them because you what does that, how do you work with that work, and working now that you're in this type of position?
Yeah. Hold tight to our principles, and constantly comfortable and our goals are, um, so that we can carry out like our goals such as continuing to push that until we have true equality. We have equality, but we don't have true equality, and making sure that the things that need to be done within our system are carried out so that we do reach true equality. Anyone who doesn't understand that we have that now is sadly mistaken. You know, we we are constantly striving for that. We are constantly striving to make sure that every person is respected for who they are, regardless of sex, regardless of race, regardless of uh, their sexuality or whether they're transgendered. We are constantly moving at it. We know that there is discrimination. There's even discrimination right here in San Francisco. And, we're unraveling it constantly. And we're going to take it on because people have enough to deal with. They should not have to deal with any type of racism or sexism or any of the isms. And people should be just dealing with people and not dealing with that type of craziness because it is harmful. It's harmful to our children. It's harmful to new generations. I just became an auntie yesterday. So yeah, and I'm
Wait a minute.
I was really reflecting on what type of world this child's coming into, and now is the thing. It's like, we got to make this world better so that they see a truly colorblind society where everyone is looked at for who they are and, and just as people, and that's what I was taught that it should have been when I was a child. And we're still fighting for that till this day. And now the call is even greater because it's like, okay, now we have another infant that I know of, and we got to make it better. Because as these new generations, I want to leave this earth knowing that I left it in a better place than when I entered it. And that should be the goal. And very much so, labor feels strongly about these issues. So,
thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Say something?
Yeah. I was going to come to you and ask you similar situations again.
But I wanted to respond and engage a little bit there. I also have my first grandchild, and I'm excited. And over the holidays, in the week of Kwanzaa, I got to hold this little life form. And in doing that, we make a commitment, right? And that's what you're talking about, this commitment to make the world and to do our part, because it's a collective effort. And so we make a commitment to do our part to not only make the world better, but to care for that individual soul. And one of the things you said was true equality. Too often as equal opportunity. That's, the names of the organizations and the offices and the policies, but true equality is not equal opportunity. True equality is equal outcomes and equal access. And outcomes and equal access, true equality can never happen. And so our work has to be around fighting for true equality as human, and again, using the theological
personalism.
For however God has made us, and the divine spirit has made us. So that full humanity, recognizing whatever that means for that individual, what full equality and their full humanity needs. That is the work that we are to do. So as the life of a public servant, whether it's in the academy or in the community, that's the kind of work that we do as activists. It's praxeological. We're looking at not just this theory, not just this ideal, because those are important, but we have to put them in work, put them in action, put them to work. And so that's what I'm wanted to comment on. I really like this notion of what's true equality and how do we strive to achieve that.
Do you feel, both of you, do you feel, I know that was a lot of dead silence there. My head is going. What is in the spaces that you have been and have worked as a minister, Sakina, and as moving up in the leadership ranks, Kim, in labor, they have obviously typically been male dominated. And they've been male dominated in a way where it's been assumed that this is a male's position, right? What's the ceiling busting stuff that some of the nonsensical minutia that you guys have had to go through to deal with those types of things?
Kim, you want to take that on first?
Lordy. You know, I a lot, you know, and I could go into sexual harassment and all that stuff. But I kind of feel like, you know, I always felt if I continue to do my best and continue to work hard, at some point it was going to get recognized. And I needed to be true to who I was and what I stood for. And I needed to hold on to that, even in the worst of times and in the darkest moments. And I was like, look, I'm damn good at what I do. And you see that? Well, you know, I'll move on. And I have. And quite frankly, I've been fired 9 times. Just because if I didn't like where something was heading, I'm like, I'd speak my mind. And I was going to be who I was, regardless of, you know, and I was going to hold on to all my beliefs. And, you know, at some point I was like, what I believe in is not wrong or indignant or whatever. And I needed to be me, because not being me would have led to bad outcomes. So I just, you know, I just held on to what I believed. And I was like, and if I didn't feel comfortable, I'd probably say something to cause the ball to roll. And then I'd be like, move on to the next thing. Yeah. You know, luckily for me, I never grew up with the belief that any company was scared of me, and that I had to like make my own way, regardless of what was going on in the world. And I was just like, I'm gonna hold on, you know, and make others see what I see. And you know, it worked out sometimes, and then it didn't work out other times.
Part of the life journey kind of situation.
Yeah, it's a life journey, and it's like, you know, you kind of just make do. But I would say, like, advice-wise to people, stay who you are, be proud, and like hold your ground, like on the important stuff. Like, there's going to be little things that you could always compromise, like, you know, like, I feel like and this person isn't doing work, but then it's like, can I do it? Yes. Like that little stuff, fine. But at the same time, when you're at the team meetings, you got to like boast who you are. Because I found, like, culturally, like, and I want you all to excuse the language, I feel like sometimes I joke around a lot, even within the labor halls, that I was like, growing up, missed the class where you get peeing in the toilet as much as counterparts do. Like, oh, you peed in the toilet, great job. And it was like, really? That shouldn't get congratulated.
Right.
You know, so like I missed that class on how to like brag.
Yeah.
And in my view, it's bragging. It was, you know, I think that's where some of my ethnicity, Asian American, like we're taught to be modest. We're taught to be a lot of things. And so modesty and bragging seem to collide. And I never really patted myself on the back the way the way a lot of men are told. Like, congratulate yourself. Like, you know, you catch a fish this big, it's this big by the end of the day, you know, and the stories get bigger. I missed that class. I was like, oh, I came in, I did this, I did this, I did this. And, you know, but I didn't know how to like make more of it. And I think that's a cultural difference for women. I see the next generation, they're way better at it. And they support each other way better. And I'm so excited to be working with the next generation of women and how they're getting past those other obstacles. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that.
Sakina, you have an experience on the ministerial side where that whole phalanx of, you know, and labyrinthine way of and Byzantine way of doing things has been, you know, almost carved, and you've made your way. Talk to us a little bit about that. And then I want to talk about this activism piece, and the talent of this next generation is just off the charts. What has been your experience?
Well, I want to, you know, extrapolate a little bit. You talked about, Kimberly talked about being oneself, being authentic, being true to who you are. And when you're dealing with what we call ecclesiastical misogynoir. Ecclesiastical misogynoir is misogyny with blackface, misogyny with brownface. And that's what happens in the church. One of the things that I have to say is I've had great mentors, male and female. I've had people who have pulled my coattails, said, Skinny, don't do it that way. It's going to be okay. And so there is a saying in many communities that God will make room for your gifts, but you have to be authentic to who you are, and you have to continue to push. You can't just say, well, you know, I'll just let it go. You have to engage in the authentic way so you can find those gifts. So God can't make room for your gifts if you're not using and operating in your gifts. You know, my gift is to address the soul of the academy and the community. All right. So my gift is to work as a clergywoman in the community, but also through the academy. I'm clear about that. In the church, the ecclesiastical misogynoir that I mentioned earlier will say, no, you have to be a pastor, you have to be that single pastor, you have to have a staff underneath you, and you have to only work in the local church. Well, that model's gone. And what I'm happy to say is that not only denominationally, but across the Church United and Interfaith as well, that model has been ripped the Band-Aid has been ripped off. It's been ripped at the seams. And so women are doing some innovative things in terms of church leadership, not just, you know, breaking the glass ceiling in 2000 as the first bishop of Vashti McKenzie, but also the work that's being done in the United Methodist Church and other denominations, Episcopal Church over history. These are historic moments where they say you can do this as well. And we see this again throughout organizations, throughout leadership, traditional leadership organizations where they have had male leads and male heads. Not just church, but in community. And again, I sit with Martin Luther King on my shoulder here. We know that the church and community are inextricably tied, all right? Whether it's a denominational church or this notion of spirit. My calling has always been as a spiritual midwife, and that have to usher in those into greatness. So my calling has been to work to help others reach their greatness. And that's where you have to work in your calling, is being authentic to that understanding of what your role in the Church Universal, or what your role in the larger arc of history is. And so that's kind of, you know, how I look at that. And there has been some moments where I said, Lord, why am I here? What am I doing? You do ask those questions, but you continue to push. And, I believe firmly in Afrofuturism and science fiction. And so I have a Jedi council at all times. My Jedi council at all times means that I have someone that I can call on to have a conversation. And we all need to have a Jedi council. And I'm part of a Jedi council for another generation. My point to take the young people out. Kimberly was talking about the how excited she is to work with the next generation of women.
Yeah.
Doing phenomenal things, just it's mind blowing, and not just because they're savvy with technology. We've had to become savvy with technology in our generation. This Generation X, Generation Next, but the millennials and zennials, they're taking it to another level.
Just full of talent, and yes. you two sit in a mentioning Sakina. You two sit in that position where you sort of serve as mentors to this next generation, but there is so much talent. When I look at on the political level, the talent of this next generation is just off the charts. And then on the activism level, the way that these new models of integrated impact, where you can't focus on one leader, kind of thing, as in the days of old, they've created this ingenious sort of mesh to where you try to pick off one area, it's like a mesh. It's going to come back together because of the way that they've sort of created this new structure that is very impactful.
It's new, but we know that there's nothing new under the sun. Going, from the notion of the round table, all right, and circular models of leadership to matrix models of leadership, right? Mm-hmm. So when we look at old models of leadership, the hierarchy model leadership fails. It fails almost every time. It fails, but it serves to hurt the individuals on the bottom. Right?
Yes.
And so the notion of a matrix leadership, concentric, circular, that has morphed into something different in the 21st century is amazing. Integrated model of leadership, we see it in Black Lives Matter, we see it in other organizations, that those are the ones that are thriving because it doesn't rely on one personality. And again, we look at organizations, movements that do have one personality in the 21st century, they're failures.
Kim, how do you deal with that? I know in terms of coming up, you've got new generations coming into the labor force. I believe, if I read correctly, that even down in the Valley now, a couple of there are new organized labor groups in some of our large tech companies that are looking for an umbrella for greater fairness and the like. And you've got this talent pool that you're working with even in labor. How is that sort of translated? Is that translating similarly with you as Sakina was new sort of leadership models and the like?
Yeah, it's a very different model, particularly regarding the tech workers. We've had traditional employer-employee relations. It's a lot different in the sense that a lot of the gig workers want to organize just to organize for the greater good. It's not as much for them just about wages, healthcare, benefits, pension. It's also for the greater causes, the bigger causes, the discrimination, the lack of, down there, campus and Facebook and all those things, there's not as much diversity on those campuses as there are parts of San Francisco. And this generation wants to see much more diversity in their work. they feel it makes them better, the crux of it. And that's what they're really organizing about. And that's what I find more fantastic about the gig workers organizing, because it's for a greater common good than it is for just the traditional wages, benefits, and things. Because some of these people who want to organize down there, they are, they're not our traditional employees. They're making six figures.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have benefits, some don't, but but they're not traditional in the sense that they feel like their wages are okay, they can live or whatever, but it's for these greater causes. They want to make sure that there's no discrimination. They want to make sure that they're like the arbiter for their employment law, because they want to have a voice at the workplace. And even though they're paid at a higher rate, they're still seeking the same thing as our home workers are seeking, or our grocery store workers are seeking. A real voice at work that says, like, this is wrong and this needs to be fixed. And it's amazing, and it does truly excite me, because they see that society can be better, and that's their organizing crux.
So this leads me, as we wind down, I'm coming to you, Sakina. I think is so this idea of common good, which is a great concept, flows into this idea of beloved community to me. Idea of what our theme is this year: justice and hope. And that's really interesting that we have now our in our matrix, this idea of the American dream is one thing, but central, it seems like, to now in our cultural matrix is about something common, and a common good, and a beloved community type of thing that could be translated sort of as elements of what King is talking about. Sakina, I'd like you to, as we sort of wind up here, what's your, how you take that, because that's sort of a great transition to what what King was thinking about.
Well, this common good, this notion of the common good, and what Thurman called the common ground, what King translated into the beloved community, as we find also the beloved community in the scripture of his religious tradition. How do we, as community leaders, as the bridge elders, as Jedi Council, teach that? How do we model that so that it can take life and flight? I hang out with 18 to 25-year-olds. That's my demographic. Whether I'm being professor, leading a workshop. So how do you help nurture, guide, and enhance the lives of that demographic, so that when they go out to be activists, when they go out into the labor force, they understand the social impact of their work, understand the social impact of their choices, of their everyday lives. So that's the work that I feel that we're doing together, is helping them understand this notion of the greater good, but also understand that they have a responsibility. They may make six figures, that's fine, but that they have a common good, and to seek out the deeper meaning of their work in their everyday lives. They're connected. They're not individual pods. All right, they're not bit, and they're part of a larger picture, larger community of life, the kaleidoscope, as we say, of life, or the beloved community, or the common ground. We can use all those metaphors. And so our work is to guide and to enhance and to nurture that, and we do our work, they'll do theirs, but we work. We can't shrink from it. We can't say it's all about our generation. We have to, get ours. We have to realize how much we are interconnected, not just intergenerationally, but as people, whether it's race, class, creed. We have to realize that we are interconnected in such a way that our actions matter, and it may have a ripple effect on many levels. So first place I would address that. What was your other question about activism?
Well, what I was thinking, and we have there was another panel I was on, and ran out, but the problem wasn't with the panel. The problem was with time. You know what I mean? Okay. We aren't the problem. Time is the problem. We're running up on our hard stop, which is a shame.
I'm sorry,
but I wanted to. I wanted to give sort of a shout out to just from the Martin Luther King Foundation. Wanted to give you for the work that you have been doing, but also the work now that you are a part of in this space of deep impact, not just for the current generation dealing with, but the generations that follow, and how you are charged with delivering tools that enable this generation our coming generations to really spark those pieces that create a different paradigm than we've been experiencing. And that is something that is closer to the common good and beloved community that Dr. King was talking about. I want to thank both of you.
May I say one last thing?
Sure.
All right. One last thing. Your theme, you said, was on justice and hope. And I peddle in hope, right?
Yeah.
And I peddle in justice. And this is my life work. But one of the things that we tend to forget is that part of activism and resistance to oppression, we have to engage in radical self-care. So one of the things that I also talk about is that as activists and as people who are engaged in the work of changing everyday lives, the people who are engaged in the work of social transformation, in the very much like Audre Lorde says, self-care is an act of resistance, is an act of rebellion. So I encourage you to care for yourselves. Don't forget to do that. Because if we're broken, we can't heal the world. If we're broken, we can't do the work. And so I'm going to continue to say that part of our justice work and part of our work to peddle in hope and social transformation is radical self-care as well.
Well, that's a great note for us to finish on. Kimberly Travaglione, the interim executive director of the San Francisco Labor Council, and the Reverend Dr. Sakina Young Skaggs, the senior associate dean of religious life and pastor of the Memorial Church at Stanford University. Thank you so much for being our special guest at this MLK 2021 Labor and Community Forum with both of you. Thank you so much, and we certainly appreciate you.
Join us for public worship.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.